Hey you guys, I apologize for getting this video to you a little later than usual. I just got in from Arizona late last night, so I'm just trying to get everything up and running this morning, making sure all the links work and whatnot. That said, I'm almost done with your compare and contrast essays. In fact, I should be finished through the bulk of, or the majority of the ones that were turned in on time by Monday night. By Tuesday, I think there's one or two late ones that were turned in, and I will turn those back around to you fairly quickly. Same thing with your argument outlines. I know many of you are still waiting for feedback from me, and I'll make sure you have those back no later than Wednesday. That said, there were a couple of you who turned in essays, your compare and contrast essays late, but you didn't follow the late policy. So if that happens to be you, you may want to go ahead and contact me about that. Also, there were a couple of you who didn't follow the prompts at all, like you did your own compare and contrast, and you didn't actually look at the topics that I gave you. If that was you, you probably ended up with a 0 on that particular essay. On all of your essays, you are given specific prompts to accomplish the actual essay itself. And so unless you get an outside topic approved by me, you can only choose from those 3 or 4 prompts that I give you. So make sure too with the argument essay that you select one of the prompts that I gave you originally in the argument essay assignment. So if you're not sure where to find that, you can go into modules, you can scroll down here, and it's in week 6, the argument essay assignment, and it'll list the 3 prompts that you can choose from. So you can't just pick anything. I think one of you has reached out to me about another topic, and that's fine as long as I approve those things, but unless you have my approval, you can't do anything beyond these particular topics, okay? With the compare and contrast essay, I wanted to point out actually a couple of things. I'm just going to go back here to week 7. When I was grading them, I noticed a really weird pattern between a lot of you, which is that you went to a website about parenting and then you decided to use this whole idea of authoritarian versus lenient parenting, which I don't know how to really say this delicately, but I don't understand why you chose to do that. The whole assignment was set up for you to tell me about 2 people in your life, your parents maybe versus your grandparents, or you as a parent versus your mom or something like that. The assignment wasn't really to sort of generalize strict or authoritarian parents versus lenient parents. I could care less sort of about the parenting style, because sometimes, well, I should say oftentimes people are much more complicated than that. They don't neatly fall into all of those categories. And this isn't a psychology class. I'm less concerned with how people fall into categories and more about your personal experience and how you reflect upon that. So, that said, that's kind of a comment specifically for the compare and contrast. Obviously, with the argument essay that we're working on right now, you will be researching and you will be looking at outside information to help inform your ideas about whatever topic you choose. That said, last thought here about the compare and contrast essay, make sure that you understand that this particular essay was out of 150 points, which means that you have to take the points that you were given and divide it by 150 in order to get your percentage. So if you saw that you ended up with, let's say, a 97, and you were thinking, woohoo, I got a 97 on that essay. Yes, that is true. You did get a 97, but that's not a 97%. That is a 97 out of 150, which is a D. So again, just sort of double check those points, because I want you to be sure that you are clear not only on why you earned the grade that you did, but that you understand sort of where your writing is at right now. I think many times students like to overinflate, right? Well, I should have gotten, an A on this paper at least, or I should have earned a B on this paper, and I'm not really sure why. I want you to make sure that you understand why. And if you have questions about that, please don't hesitate to email me. I try to be really thorough in the comments, not only on your paper itself, but also I typically end up writing you all a paragraph at the end of grading, again, just so you understand the weaknesses and strengths of your essay. So make sure you check that out. So with this week, again, there's lots of stuff to do today, but really, truly, the priority here is to continue to research and continue to write your essays. So your outlines, your argument essay outlines should be graded and turned back into you Tuesday or Wednesday. I've kind of started to already do them, so if you already have yours back, you just were kind of at the top of my pile. So I lost my train of thought already. Hashtag Monday, right, guys? Notice here you don't have a lot of reading, and a lot of this stuff, at least this stuff, I know I've assigned it to you before. What I don't want you to do is look at those pages and say, oh, I've read this before, and then close the book. What I really want you to be sure that you do with these particular 5 pages is that you understand how to incorporate an outside source, right, and how to cite that source properly. If you are not citing these sources in this particular essay by the final draft correctly, right, that you will likely end up with a D or an F on this essay, and that is not to scare you. What I'm trying to emphasize here is how very important it is that you understand citing, citations, and the MLA format. Again, that's not just for my class. This is going to help you for the rest of your academic career because citations is something that we do often. It doesn't really matter what field of study you go into. If you use someone else's work to develop your own or your own ideas, you'll want to make sure you cite that properly. The next set of pages here from your textbook are about logical fallacies. And essentially you don't want to make these kind of errors in your logic while you're arguing. And these are the kind of errors that happen all the time. I promise you. You probably make them when you're arguing with your loved ones or your roommates or, your best friends. They're kind of endemic in our culture of how we reason. And if you want to be a very good and very persuasive writer and arguer, you want to make sure that you don't actually make those errors. So if I were you, I'd really read that and I'd write that down. Notice here, this says to watch the logical fallacies video, right? And when you actually click on this, it's going to take you through to the library. And so you'll have to log in with your information. And then it should take you right to the video itself. And let's see if this will load at all, if we're just stuck in internet hell. Okay. So again, this is just it's an older video, probably from I'm gonna guess the early 90s here. I think total it's like 27 minutes or something like that. I would, after you read this stuff, 27 minutes. I would go through and just click on some of these logical fallacies and then watch the particular video. I liked the idea of putting the video here because she kind of gives some good reasoning behind each of the logical fallacies or an example of that. So again, just make sure that you understand that. Here is a fantastic essay about immigration by Sonia Nazario, and some of you may have read a book she wrote a few years ago. It was called Enrique's Journey, which basically she followed the journey of Enrique, who I think he was like 10 or 11 when he got on La Bestia, the train that moves from Central America all the way up or close to the United States-Mexico border. And so she follows this young boy and just how terrifying this experience really, truly is. Anyway, so she's very versed. She's a writer, though, so just understand that she's not necessarily an expert who's studying this, although she is a researcher. She's a journalist. She's looking into this. She looks at all kinds of stories and research. But this essay is really well done. I want you to think of it like an argument essay. She sets up for us, and really I think who her audience is are people who are saying that yeah, but what are we supposed to do about immigration? And so she's trying to give them an argument maybe for some people to sort of chew on. So I think she does a really great job there. So take a look at that. I think you have a couple quiz questions in relationship to this article. We were going to do an actual another discussion board this week on this article, but we're just not going to have time, and I'd rather you throw your energy into that rough draft instead of another discussion board. But anyways, so make sure you check that out and read it. You do have your very last quiz in this class is due by Wednesday. The rough draft of the argument essay is due by Thursday. I do want you to note on that rough draft that I have asked you specifically to complete 3 full pages and then your works cited page. And part of what I'm asking you to do is I'm asking you to not make, and you can have more than that. What I want you to focus on is really getting 3 solid pages down before you worry about maybe adding in, another supporting reason, or maybe you haven't quite finished all your research. I want there to be, a place for you to go with your particular rough draft. Here's what I am tired of, though. While I am grading your compare and contrast essays, I am really tired of you guys giving me the same version of your rough draft that you are in your final draft. What's the point, right? What's the point? If you don't change anything, or if you legit change 2 sentences in there, that's not revision. That's just you changing 2 sentences and sending it off and calling it good. What do you expect to happen, right? So I want you to take this challenge of revision really seriously, right? And really give it to yourself in terms of, even if you don't get great peer reviews back, right? You still have options. One, you can email me. Lots of students do that. They say, hey, Vicki, what do you think of this thesis? Or I'm having trouble, citing this, or, can you help me better phrase this topic sentence, right? You can certainly email me, ask me something really specific. Happy to help you. You can certainly get some ideas about how to revise from the online tutoring. You can just click on this link over here. Also, too, y'all, check this out. On every one of these discussion boards where I ask you to post your rough draft and your peer review, I have given you this long-winded list of things that you could read in somebody else's essay and then comment on. But do you know what else you could do with this? You could read your own essay and go down each one of these things, like introduction, and ask questions of your own essay and how to change that. Okay, so what I don't want you to do is just kind of get in that lazy habit of saying if I just change a couple things and fix spelling, then that's good. That's not what revision actually is. And so again, I want you to take that task very seriously. So back to week 7, another thing I wanted to point out to you was that this week is your last week to get your 5th and final Language Success Center DLA completed. So most of you are actually using the COW. I think only one of you might be going into the offices. So make sure that you're completing those, right, and that you turn them in. Again, last time on the DLA number 4, there were a couple of you who turned it in, but you didn't complete the whole thing, so you get a 0. There's no half credit for these things. This comes directly from the Language Success Center. I don't even grade your DLAs. They just tell me whether or not you completed them. So if you complete them, right, you get 20 points. If you don't complete them, or if it's incomplete for some reason, right, it's a 0. So again, this is your last one to complete, so make sure you get it done. And you have to do it by Friday before 3 p.m. That should feel pretty usual for you. Let me see. What else did I have to tell you? Oh, I know. I wanted just to briefly sort of touch on just quoting sources. And this is specific to just in-text sources, and this is a general overview. You will be reading some of this stuff. You probably have already read a lot of this stuff. But again, I'm pointing this stuff out to you because there should be no mistakes when it comes to citing in your final essay. And some of the things that I have already seen in your discussion board where you had to post your article from last week, many of you still don't understand how to incorporate somebody else's words inside your own words. And that's okay, but that's part of what I want you to kind of strike at. So Look at here. In-text citations are just sometimes called parenthetical citations. So if you hear me say that, or if you hear another instructor say that, right, all that means are just what happens inside your text, right, inside your paragraph, inside your words. And when we call them parenthetical, just think of the word parentheses. That's what I think of. So this essentially is just a quick reference, right, so that a reader, while we're reading your work, and maybe you give a quote somewhere, I can immediately look at what's inside that parentheses, and I can flip right over to the works cited page. And based on that information that you gave me, right, like a name and a page number in that parentheses, I can see the full citation, all, like, everything I need to know about that particular reference on the works cited page. So, and even if we directly or indirectly use someone else's ideas or words, we still have to go ahead and give them an in-text citation. So if you are not sure, if you think to yourself, oh, I don't know if I'm doing that correctly, right? When in doubt, just make sure you give credit. Make sure you cite those sources. Okay, so for the in-text citations, you're going to need to know the following information. The author's or author's last name, specifically, right, the last name. If there is not an author, and that happens sometimes when you have a big, let's say journalistic project, or sometimes big writing projects, you just have so many people working on stuff or contributing to it, or actually what happens nowadays too, computers are writing articles, news articles, so sometimes there's just no author available. But anyways, you'll want the title or like a shortened version of the title. You'll also need the location of the information. So typically that's a page number. If there isn't a page number because it just appears on like a web page, right, don't worry about that part. If there are paragraph numbers, you can certainly get the paragraph number where that information came from, right? But again, if there's not that information, you have to just skip it, okay? So what we want to do, ICE, I think I mentioned this last week, but ICE just simply means it's an acronym, right? I for introduce, C for citation, and E for explain. So the I, just before you start your quote, right, you should introduce it. You should tell us, the reader, who is talking. Because what happens when I'm reading your stuff, I hear your voice in my head, right? You might be making an argument, blah, 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 and then all of a sudden there's just some quote, right? So somebody else's voice comes into your essay and have no idea who's talking or why it's there. So you really want to work on having these signal phrases that kind of help tell us who's talking. So generally what would be great, right, is to set up, as I did here in this particular example, right, who is talking? Who is talking before we start that quote, so that way the reader knows. If possible, tell us the credentials of that person. So if Dr. Olive Smiley is, one of the leading researchers, right, for, student finance at the University of California, right, at Los Angeles, you'll want to make sure that you let us know that, right, because those credentials seem particularly relevant to what we're actually talking about, okay? So C refers to citing. So here you can see this citation. I'm kind of moving my mouse around, right? What that means is, and if you're asking yourself, wait, why isn't there a last name here? Well, notice I already introduced who's talking here. So for me as a reader, what I'm going to look for on the works cited page is this last name Smiley, right? And so I'd flip over in your essay to the last page, look and see if I see Smiley, Olive, and then the article's information where this comes from, right? What I'll do then is look up the article and then scroll over to page 23 and see if I can find this particular citation. So that is what you aim to do with everything you quote beyond your ideas and your words. You want me to be able to have all the information I need to find that exact quote. In fact, that's what I do when I grade these argument essays. I legit sit with two computers, and while I have your computer up on one screen, as soon as I come across a citation on my other computer, I just click over and see if I can find that particular information based on what you gave me. Okay, so just think of it like that. Lastly though, and probably the most important part of the in-text citation, is to explain what this quote means or why it's relevant or how it's connected to your particular idea. And this is really what you want to do with all kinds of evidence, right? You don't just want to like give like a quote and then back up out of there, right? That's not what it means to provide evidence. You want to provide evidence in a way that supports your idea and that you draw those connections for the reader. Don't leave it up to me to decide why this information is relevant. You should tell me why it's relevant. So notice here, in her article on student finance, Dr. Olive Smiley states, quote, "Oftentimes, when students are depressed, they spend money on things that make them feel better, things that make them feel less homesick." Notice there's no period here, right? Here's the page number in parentheses and then the period on the outside of that. One of those things, Dr. Smiley admits, is food. Students who feel homesick are more likely to grab a Frisbee-sized cookie on the way out of the cafeteria. This homesick binging could account for the rise in weight gain in the first year of college. So essentially what these couple of sentences are doing here is just explaining that part of what the essay might be getting after in terms of like why, I think this essay was about the freshman 15, if you've ever heard that students who are in their first year of college typically gain about 15 pounds. But anyway, so what this expert is kind of saying is that students actually spend money on things that make them feel better. And then the idea here that the student had was, yeah, they do, and they often spend that on food as a form of comfort, right? So it's connecting Dr. Smiley's ideas with the student's idea there, okay? So it's really important. The works cited page, as we've talked about several times, is really just the who, the what, where, when. I should be able to find all of that stuff there. Yeah, that's an example. But actually, I wanted to show you a better example that I came across when I was looking over in the Cow. You've probably actually already seen these over here, or maybe you haven't, but these are a really great resource too. I like to print up this kind of stuff, especially when I was a student, you guys. I am such a visual person that I really enjoyed having this stuff right in front of me. So if you go beyond the DLA files in the Cow, and you look down here, you should get to one about research paper. Look at here, MLA Works Cited page. And if I click on that, right, it's gonna, oh, I gotta download it. Oh no, it's gonna come up. Anyways, it gives me a really great reference guide of what that should look like. So I think these are, again, can be really helpful. I particularly prefer the Works Cited sample because then I can see all the formatting, right? Here's the Works Cited, right? Notice last name, the last page number, this is in bold, this is in underline, and then we have every single reference that the student made used, right? And then all the information to find this stuff, okay? So if you would like, that's certainly there for you, as I mentioned in the Cow. They have other really great things in there too. In terms of in-text citations, let's see, where is that? I know one of them I use for your quiz questions, so if you're still paying attention to me right now, this should hopefully help you. But on the MLA in-text citation, I use some of the information on that handout for one of your quiz questions. So you might want to take a look at that kind of stuff to help you. So if you do need other help with that, you can certainly scroll through these. These are just tools that you can use. You're not required to read them. I certainly would if I was struggling with any of that kind of stuff. So, all right, I think that's all I have for you this week. Yeah, rough draft is due by Thursday, and then your 2 peer reviews will be due by Saturday. So make sure you get those in on time. Some of you are kind of slowing down a little bit, like you're not getting things turned in, and I'm a little concerned because next week is our last week. And pay attention, the things that are coming next week, basically you are going to write the best version of this argument essay possible. So you're really going to throw your energy into this rough draft, and then once you get some feedback on that rough draft, you are going to spend those next few days really working and polishing up that final draft. Notice too that this class ends, I believe it's next Thursday, maybe it's Wednesday. It ends earlier than a full week too, so just FYI, that's also coming. So okay, you guys, I will see you in email or on the discussion board. You'll be getting your outlines and your annotated bibliographies back from me soon. Talk to you then. Bye.